Hi YouTube, this is my Hudson Valley HiFi, and this is a little different video today than what we normally do. This is our vintage area for repairs and restorations, and we have a little different video for you today. This is kind of an overview of a very popular model, which is part of a very popular series, it seems, of these vintage Pioneer receivers. This is a SX-1050. And this unit is nearing completion. This is probably around 2/3 of the way through the restoration process, but I thought we would just do a little video about this unit and kind of vintage in general, because there's so many misconceptions about this equipment, and we'll have other videos kind of comparing and contrasting this versus, say, something from the 80s or 90s, or getting into the modern era of audio. But for those of you not familiar with this series, this was later in the 70s. This was the last, right before the 80 series, which was the final kind of 1970s quote-unquote pioneers that were made. And this was when the power war between them and Marantz and Yamaha and Sansui and all these Japanese manufacturers, they were really trying to outdo each other with these big, powerful receivers. But the issue, of course, now is these things are old. they're they're over 40 years old, and parts are not meant to last that long. It doesn't matter how good they were when they were new, and a lot of these, even from the start, had some issues. And every generation kind of has problems, but just kind of going to go over this unit and what's involved. Restoration is not repairing. This unit was originally brought to another shop with the issue of the customer complaining that the unit was going in and out of protection. The relay was kicking on and off. Somebody's already replaced one of the protection relays, but then there is a second relay on this unit that is over here. This is actually the speaker protection relay. This 48-volt coiled relay closes when your offset or the leakage, the imbalance of the amplifier is below a certain point. This closes. And this board in general is kind of plagued with some problems. Some of the transistors that are on here, specifically ones that drive the relay, we've already replaced two of them right there with modern Fairchild parts. And you can see the capacitors are all brand new. We'll probably also change some of these voltage sensing diodes on this board. They're kind of known, prone to be bad as well. But not going too deep into receiver versus other equipment and all that from this era. We could probably do tons of videos on that. If you guys would like to see that, shoot us a comment. Let us know what you look to see for about vintage gear or modern gear. But the problem that the initial shop had thought was this board right back here. This is right in front of the power amplifier. I don't know if I can get a good shot of it for you, but we've since rebuilt this whole board. New capacitors, new transistors almost throughout, new voltage regulators on these heat sinks, which they are a problem. They're known to be a problem. And a bunch of small transistors also. What the previous shop did that kind of is driving us nuts here, they cut the board out thinking that, like some gear, more modern audio, video, and so on, you just replace the whole board. That's not how these units are serviced. When these units were created, they use this wire wrapping method. There's a special tool, we have one here in the store, where you can wrap these squared pins. You can see here on the phono board, there's the wire wraps. And when you use that tool, it actually digs into the wire and makes a really, really good connection between the wire and the board. I think personally better than a soldered connection. So, these were used very heavily in military applications, in navigation systems, things like that. So it's really, it's supposed to be preserved. You're not supposed to cut these out. Somebody obviously shouldn't be doing this, but all the wires are now soldered to the board. All the connections look good. After we did all the work on this board, you can see all the new caps under there. Once we did all the work on this board, we made sure those connections were good, and then tried to straighten out some of these wires, which are now shorter because they snipped them off. But all the connections are great. So far, this unit, the power supply, which is down here, this is beyond the equalizer. Let me show you where we're at here. We're in the bottom. This is under the chassis. That is the rectifier board. There's a bridge rectifier right here underneath this heatsink. There's a series of diodes as well. I believe that's a bridge rectifier. And you have a couple capacitors on this board. Those have been replaced with new Nitricon high temp capacitors. And that then feeds into that regulator board. It also feeds into these very large 22,000 microfarad filter capacitors, which power the amplifier. This runs at, I want to say it's about a 55 volt power rail that feeds the amp, positive and negative. It is a balanced amplifier, direct coupled, but it does have that relay blocking your speaker just in case. But other than that, yeah, the problem with this, we believe, was in this. Well, the former shop thought that it was in this board. I actually disagree. I think it was either a problem with this protection circuit, or this was something that was very interesting. So the amplifier, when you look at the amp board back here, it's a big board. It's probably about 14-inch or so. Runs from the top all the way down to this large toroidal transformer here. And then back here, this is a giant heatsink that has all the output devices on them. It also has these triple diodes, which anyone who's a fan of Pioneer, they should know those are vital. That is a very difficult part to replace, if not impossible. But this unit's nice. When we did the work on the power amp, this whole section, the heatsink comes out. You can remove it from the chassis using these harnesses. And when we did these harnesses, these pins were so badly corroded. They're nice and polished up now. We used a fiberglass pen to really clean them up nice. But they were making horrible connections. So that could have been the issue right there as well. Just poor connections to the amplifier's output devices. That'll certainly cause imbalances and cause your protection relay to kick in. But yeah, this is the kind of the layout of this unit. It's power supply, your large filters, your regulation supply, your power amp is back here. Up here, your protection board. This is all tuner. This large board here, this is the tuning coil underneath here. And then as we go down to the bottom, in the bottom of the unit here, let me see if I can come out a bit. You can see that's the bottom of the heatsink right back here. Let me get a chopstick since I was just working on this unit and had it energized. But this is the heatsink, bottom of the filter capacitors. We saw these up on top. This board right here, this is your phono stage, which actually comes with a cover. It's supposed to go right over top of this. That shields that from, it's a metal box to shield it from the rest of it, especially when you have the the filter capacitors right here. So there's a lot of energy running through here, and a very prone to noise circuit like the phono stage. In this phono stage, all the caps have been rebuilt and then were replaced. And then the transistors in here, there are this unit in general, it's plagued by these A725 13C 1312s. They're complementary pairs all over the place. They're in almost every circuit. They're in the preamp. They're in the amp. They're not in the amp. The amp is actually A750s are the inputs. We changed them out as well. But all of these 725s, 1312s, or 1313s, depending on the age, we replace all those typically because they are noisy. They're very prone to getting leaky. We actually were just starting. This is the EQ. As you can see, it's actually mounted to the front. Those are all original parts in there. They all have to be removed, and a lot of low noise parts are going to get used in here. That's the EQ circuit, and there are 1312s in there. Those will get replaced as well. Just above it, this is actually, all this here is preamplifier. This is the volume control on the front. This is a muting attenuator, drops you down 20 dB. Filters, balance. So all that's attached to this preamp board. So, we hear a lot of times guys will say, well, my controls are noisy. Well, they just got to get sprayed. And, you know, they make it sound like it's a 2-minute job, but, you know, on a unit like this, as you can see, I mean, we've taken the faceplate off, all the knobs, all that has to come off. The faceplate needs to be removed. To get to these controls, to actually clean them, you need to remove them from the chassis and then flush all these out with the appropriate cleaners, you know, and then apply a lubricant to them once you're done. So it's quite a job. I mean, so far we have, I'd say up to this point, I have about 15, 16 hours that we've put into this unit. And I'm figuring we have about another, probably another 6 or 7 doing these 2 boards. There's a lot of work that has to get done on those. We're going to replace probably around 40, 50 components between capacitors and transistors on those 2 boards. And then it's off to cosmetics. We ultrasonically clean all the knobs, the aluminum knobs. The faceplate gets a good cleaning. And then everything gets put back together, bench tested. And then we like to run these units quite a bit before they go home, just to be sure that, you know, everything's 100% and working perfectly. So this is a pretty good example, though, of in what's, in my opinion, a well-made unit in the 70s. You know, it's still a 1970s unit. You know, you can see things like the phono stage, you know, carbon film resistors, which, you know, better than 1960s, you know, where you had a lot of that, you know, you had a lot of carbon comp type resistors, but, you know, still not metal film like you're going to see in a lot of modern components. Everything's through hole, which is really nice, very easy to work on. Pioneer units like this were pretty thoughtfully laid out. I think they learned from the prior series, which SX-1010 was their big unit. On that unit, this is the underside of the chassis here. You'd actually have power supply was mounted right here in the middle. And the amp was in a very similar spot. It actually takes up almost the entire back of the 1010. And the problem with that unit was always the heat. Heat would be generated down here, and then it would run back and up through the amplifier. So all that heat the power supply was creating, it was cooking itself, and then it was heating up your amplifier. Where this unit, you don't have that. You have the phono stage under here, which makes way more sense. Put the phono stage under the chassis and shield it. And then also you have your voltage well, your rectifier circuit is under here, but that's not going to get as hot as, say, that regulated power supply, which is up here, which is now vertical, and that makes way more sense. The heat is way, way better distributed when it's up here and can vent, you know, up out of the back of the case. So this unit was quite a bit better in terms of engineering and thought out. It's a receiver, you know, 70s were very big on receivers. What I don't care for with receivers is really, you know, everything is kind of crammed. This is a very big unit. It's a huge, huge unit compared to, you know, something more modern. And most of this, you know, it's all taken up by tuner. This tuner really takes up a lot of real estate, and you know, that's a kind of a negative. And it's also taking power. There's a power circuit coming off this regulation supply that's feeding the tuner. So, you know, even though the tuner may not be running, you know, you are feeding it energy that could be going to your amplifier. And that's always kind of the disadvantage of a receiver is, you know, they're crowded because of the tuners. You know, arguably they don't sound as good as, say, a quality-made integrated amp. But these were cool. They were fun. They were very popular. I mean, they did sell a lot of these back in the 70s. And they're pretty sought after now because of the, you know, the nostalgic factor. They are pretty. You know, when this thing's all lit up and LED converted, which we'll do to all the lighting here, there's actually bulbs in a acrylic housing here. And we'll replace those with LEDs. You can't really tell the difference between them and the incandescents, but they do run nice and cool. And then all of these indication lamps on the front panel, when you push the various buttons here, they light up the sources. Those will all be LED converted, and that's a little brighter. It's a little more uniform, actually. I think it looks really good when it's all done. Pretty sharp. Little tip to the Pioneer guys and the Marantz fans out there too, because they use the same type of push button. They're the source of a lot of aggravation. If you have a channel out and it goes in and out, in and out. Besides these flip switches, they like to play games too. These push buttons are very common for being a problem. You'll have a channel go out and come back, or if you kind of wiggle the switch, it'll come in and out. They're very prone to getting dirty, getting oxidized. The best way we have found to clean them, since it's very difficult getting to them, even if you have your EQ circuit out like we have here, you can see it's still, they're just buried. You'd have to remove both boards to really get to them. What we find very, very good way of cleaning those controls is to actually get this unit on its back, standing up, so the faceplate is facing upwards, kind of chalking it with some blocks of wood just to get it up off the bench. Then we take various cleaners. We use, we obviously use, like everybody out there, good old D5 deoxit, or just a plastic safe contact cleaner, and you can spray it down here on both sides. Spray it on the underside, the overside. If you're looking from the back as you're doing that, spraying downward, it'll get down in the control, clean it up really nice. It flows through the control, through the contacts, which that's exactly what you're looking for, is to get it down into that really tight control. But that does work really well. The flip switches, obviously, they're a whole nother source of headaches. They do like to get a little oxidized and nasty. The volume control on this unit is an Alps. It's a Japanese Alps. It's a sealed unit. There are kind of replacements out there if you had to. They use set screws on here. It's not gnarled or fluted. Like you have the balance control on here is fluted. This actually is a set screw. So is the tuning knob. You see, it looks like somebody might have been trying to get that off and didn't take the set screw out. If I can actually show you the tuning knob. This is the tuning knob. If it has holes, this one has one right there. That means there's a set screw in there. So don't go yanking on that, trying to get it off. You'll break it. You'll either pull the shaft right out of the control, or worse, you might strip it. Definitely small hex wrench to get those off. All the rest of the ones, these that are fluted like this, they just slide off. You may have to give them a little oomph. I find 2 tablespoons both sides sometimes helps pushing them off, a little leverage. But yeah, this is cosmetic wise. All these will get nice and cleaned. The faceplate will get cleaned up, get all the dust out of this dial. It looks like the previous shop left the faceplate off for a while. There's a lot of dust in here. Normally the dial's pretty clean, but that is yeah. So this is the SX-1050 Pioneer. This is part 850 up to 1250. They're all very similar in this unit. 1050 is nice though, 120 watts a channel into 8 ohms. This does have the toroidal transformer. I believe the 950 and the 1050 have the toroid, and then the 1250. The 850 is iron core. 950 might be iron core as well. Don't quote me on that. I don't know my Pioneer history that well. But it's a well-made receiver. It's well thought out. It's fun. It's fairly easy to work on. I don't know if I'd recommend it for a beginner. You definitely need good tools, but yeah, it's a fun unit to play around with, and it just screams 1970s, doesn't it? So maybe we'll take a video when this is all done, all cleaned up, polished, and running. Maybe we'll show you guys bench tests on it too. That'd be nice. Show you how that's done, power output and things like that. And if you guys have any questions, I know I haven't said it during this whole video, but subscribe to our channel, please. It gives us the ability to keep making these videos. And if you want to see more vintage, we do some Pioneer units like this. We do some Marances. We don't do nearly as much as we used to, but every once in a while we'll do one of these once or twice a month. Have one of these units out here, and we'll go over some of the quirks and some of the things to look for. If you are thinking about this, these were at one point quite affordable. Now it doesn't seem like that's the case. Everyone wants a piece of this era, but. All right, well, if you guys have any questions, please comments below. You can always reach us, Hudson Valley HiFi. You can reach me, Mike, M-I-K-E, at HudsonValleyHiFi.com. The number here in the store, 845-219-1730. You can call us, you can text us. Happy to help out with, questions about vintage stuff, questions about new stuff. We do carry, over 40 different lines of modern, high-quality analog and home theater equipment. Then if you have any other questions, yeah, feel free to reach out. Thanks for watching. Please give us a thumbs up. Please subscribe. Please subscribe. Please subscribe. And look forward to talking to you on the next video. Thank you.